I'm Ron Zakay, the founder of Deal Engine. Catch me on this episode of the Jesse T Show.
Ron Zakay, welcome to the show, brother. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much, Jesse. That gives me a little bit of an inkling into where to go next. Why would we start on the idea of what is the differences between the butchers of the world to the symphony makers of the world?
Tell us about it.
Yeah. And when we discuss about the person's ideation of self, and we think about the people that seek certain truths or truths in general, truth seekers, I really, really, really believe that with all the respect to all the things that are nature plays a pretty significant role. And I'll deviate into my own story. At first, when I was an expat, I was looking for expats around me because I'm LGBTQ, I'm gay. I have two loving partners. That's side story to that. But I'm used to being an outsider in systems and looking on the inside. Now, when you add that to an expat, you kind of have those two layers of plexiglass, so to speak, from any society, any construct, be it language or tribal community or both. And my ideation was always like, something drove me. Like my very first startup back in the day, I'm talking 98, 99, I got poached into a Japanese one, which was amazing. But I'm looking at that moment, for any other person, they'll go back to their home country. They'll be in that like, I've peaked in certain level and I can kind of roll with that. That for me was the jumping board to A, travel the world, and then B, to get here, fall in love, and stay in the Bay Area. Now, looking backwards, which is why I'm talking about nature, nurture, and ideation, I think I asked a lot of questions, and I think people around me that were not used to it or aren't that are either learning to become comfortable with not asking questions as I am becoming comfortable with asking questions. And to kind of roll back to the whole conversation of who you are as a person, I would argue very, very strongly that we are who we are, but with enhancement of the more you know about yourself, the more you will unearth this kernel that asks for more.
Yep.
Yeah. So thinking about that, thinking about kids, thinking about ideation, thinking about self-actualization. We talked about in a previous conversation about plant medicine, and there is an assertion out there that you can use plant medicine, and I'm using the term use on purpose because it denotes a verb. It denotes it will be done to me. I don't think so. I think all the curiosity that was there, regardless of the experience or otherwise, the challenges, both the chemical status quo or the communal element, which is the people around you, any challenges in the way that you don't have a choice, but to look at it from a different perspective, you are then provided a different perspective, if that makes sense.
It does, man. And what you're talking about and everything we've discussed before we've jumped on in other conversations is how that plays into your life and how that plays into your relationships and your business and your own personal self-relationship is this consciousness expansion that started when you were young and this thirst for learning and adventure and kind of understanding. So talk us a little bit about that. Where did you start plugging into the learning and the inquisitiveness that led you into plant medicines and beyond?
Yeah, which is exactly, thank you for a very great question. I would literally not divorce one from the other, and I would try to avoid even the causation element or correlation element of either, and I'll explain why. I've surrounded myself with it sounds so congratulatory, and that's horrible, but I did. I am surrounded by amazing people, and some of them never experienced plant medicine, but definitely experienced societal pressures, which asked for very similar question by nature of inevitability. You are now in this room, and this room needs to be open, and good luck finding the key. It's on you. Now, it could be with society, with the racial oppression, identity oppression, and much, much, much more complex topics, but it also could be with a person saying, I'm not doing what I love. My motivation to go to work is the fuel, which is cash, and that cash is sustainable. And much like most people in survival mode, the tunnel vision is this.
Yep.
And be it plant medicine or even the experimentation around asking the right questions, I think I'm just a glutton. And if I'm looking at it from the last benign perspective, is every time I'm wrong within an argument, and you can ask either of my partners that there's a big body of evidence there that it's really hard to convince me of something. Let's just start from there. It's an uphill battle, and if not a lot more. But the second part is more interesting and more fun to me, which is owning the difference of opinion and owning the knowledge that I was wrong. And over the years, I've developed this muscle, for lack of a better definition, that literally twitched in joy every time I got a broadened perspective, every time I was afforded a broader point of view. And by virtue of being wrong, you automatically provided that.
Beautiful. I mean, humbled, right? We talked about hubris and we talked about ego a bunch, and you'll never kill, like people say, let's kill the ego. You can't kill the ego. The ego is a part of you. It's just effectively surrendering, managing, and being in love with yourself to where like your ego doesn't have to step up and like, you know, in a certain situation, show that you're bigger than, or show that you're stronger than. It's just, a lot of it's just to kind of be and receive love. Like that's one of the highest downloads that I integrated in my life with my walk in plant medicine. Is my goal is to be and receive love. That's really pretty much it. And in terms of just everything that I do, you know, there's all these other arms to everything, but be and receive love, right? It's one of the highest vibrations that you can operate on.
I like it.
And that's where I've been with it. And so talk about your journey with it, because I think it's so imperative for people to understand, you know, for those that don't even know what plant medicines are. I mean, they hear me jammering and jabbering about it, but for people's perspective that maybe haven't heard me say it yet, what is plant medicine, and what has your walk with it been like?
As you can imagine, it was in the right setting. At first with shaman, then by myself. But plant medicine in general, mine specifically was ayahuasca. And ayahuasca, in my humble opinion, is the most benign of the A, B, C's to Z's and backwards. Reason being, it gives you a lot of time and space with very critical thinking around both the definition of self. There is a visceral reaction. I think most people in ayahuasca, there's like, oh my God, I'm exercising my demons. Like, no, you can't be exercising your demons when you feel maternal love. Like those cannot happen
right
in the same continuum. Yes, you need to deal with some tough, if I can say the S word, with some tough shit, but tough shit is part of the reason you're having that conversation. So I really think of ayahuasca specifically as quote unquote a must experience. All the rest, just to be perfectly honest, different people react for different things, and some of them, if not all of them, have dark corridors. The only place I've not met a dark corridor is ayahuasca, which is funny because I am not the poster child for anything. I'm both agnostic in a sense, and you're more than welcome to quote me. I'm a finite mind. Leave me alone with infinite realities or powers. Just leave me alone. I have no freaking clue. I have no freaking idea. I'll stick to the I don't know. That being said, you know, there's a lot of brush paintings around, brushes. I just don't know what the freaking painter is.
Right.
So I'll leave it at that. I'll take the brushes. One of those brush strokes is ayahuasca in terms of its experience. And I can't really describe it outside of using very flowery words, and I will do so.
Please.
It's a long, warm blanket that forces you into the darkest recesses of your own psyche, being hubris, ego, call it what you will. But you will have a conversation with yourself, your darker demons. And by the end of said conversation, or conversations plural, most of the people that ask the tough questions and embrace that maternal love, and I'm being very specific on gender here on purpose because there is maternal love.
It's the feminine. The feminine. Ayahuasca is the feminine. Things like San Pedro peyote are the masculine for sure.
Perfect.
No question.
I had no idea that they would define as such, but it felt motherly. And I've had many, many, many experiences. But the thing is, when you get to that conversation with your own inner demons, and I think when you end the conversation, or at least when the diminished returns, let's be very, very, very RI-ish on this, is when you get the demons to sit with you on the dinner table and you laugh about the things that bother you both.
Yep.
That's like the epitome of fun in that specific environment. And I've break bread with my demons. I'm not in any way, shape, or form down with them. Trust me. There are plenty of dark corridors in day-to-day life mundane, recursive, boring life that put the fear of God, and I'm not a believer, but still the fear of God in anything I do, be it from imposter syndrome to working 17 hours days, work thinking and feeling I'm working hard, not smart sometimes.
Yep.
Like there's a lot there that has not been resolved. But it's fun to break bread with your demons. Let's just leave it at that.
It is. And, there's a gentleman I listen to, and I'd love for you to get into him. His name's Aubrey Marcus, if you haven't heard of him yet. Aubrey Marcus is, he's sat with many plant medicines through the years, and he's, successful. He's into health and wellness. So he's not someone who's out there just to get high. Like, he's actually doing a ton of work. And he actually just came on a podcast. He has his own podcast called the Aubrey Marcus podcast. He just came back from I think it was Soltara. Went down to Soltara, came back, and he actually, talking about demons, he actually met one of his demons and was confronted and was describing how the demon looked and how bad and awful. And he had a dream. He's not a big dreamer, but he had a dream about a week or two before he went to do this ceremony. And he's done ayahuasca a bunch of times. And so he understands. But I think this might've been the first time, or one of the first times he sat with the Shipibo tribe of shamans. And it's much different than other iterations. And they sing ikaros versus play instruments. Wow. And it's beautiful, beautiful stuff. And they can kind of control the set and setting through their songs. And they do things with protection and making sure that, all this different stuff. And he had a dream prior to this sitting with ayahuasca, and it was saying, you're going to die, and you're going to die on this date. And the date that it was saying that was the date he was going to sit with ayahuasca. And so he sits with ayahuasca. He meets this demon. He calls in, he's not religious, but he calls in, is it Michael, the Archangel Michael? He's the protector, the one you see with
the one with the sword, right?
The sword.
Yeah.
He called in Michael to protect him when he was with this demon. And basically what he learned was Michael doesn't have the sword. It's a blunt sword. If you look at it, it's not supposed to be a sharp sword. And the blunt sword is to separate truth from lies. It's not. And so he got this profound insight and wisdom, came back. And once he thought Michael was going to come in and use the sword to defeat the demon, so to speak. Michael told him, no, he's like, you have to give him love, or whatever it was. And that's what every being craves. And this demon had a mask like the Phantom of the Opera. It laments its sadness and longing for love. And then he came at this demon with love. It sounds crazy and hokey, but you understand this world.
So even the setting, you know what? Allow me a tangent.
Yeah.
Regardless of the existence or lack thereof of whatever is out there, and again, I'm a finite mind. I will not try to put the passport of either infinite realities or powers at play. I don't have that kind of ego. Talk to me in my 20s would have been a different conversation. It's not age, it's just the repetition of experience provides you deeper and deeper insights, I think. I would agree. That being said, to what you just said, it's anything that you can put your energy into. And when I say energy, let's be as least hokey as we can. I mean time. The one resource we brought on this planet, regardless of how we were brought here, what happens before you were born to after we die, that I don't give a fuck. I really don't. But what I do give a fuck about is if you learned to double click, yes, corporate speak, and I apologize. It amuses me endlessly, so I will keep using it. When you double click on your own positive feedback loops and you find people that resonate with those feedback loops. And I mean, I am a starving person when it comes to affirmation. I need it from both of my partners to their chagrin. Trust me. I have two partners that talks to itself in its own story in what I need, lacking the family unit that most heterosexuals have. I have kids, my elasticity of my heart would have grown by virtue of kids. I don't have it because I'm gay, then I have two partners. There you go. We all live together, we cohabit, we have a family unit. I found a way around it. I have hacked my way through positive reinforcement and by creating a family unit. But seriously looking at what you are promoting and living within, it's feedback loops. And positive feedback loops with positive results, which then means 1 + 1 = 3, of 1 or 1 times 2 = 19, and you keep going from there until it becomes more and more fun and more happy. And I think I hear it in your voice that you click on that specific understanding, and now you get into that place of, well, other people can benefit from this.
For sure. 100%. And it's, I've been called to this work and to deploy my experiences to everybody that I can come in contact with that's, available to receive the message. I sat with psilocybin mushrooms a few times over the last 12 months. And one of the biggest downloads, if you will, or knowings or learnings that I got teaching.
Groks.
What's that?
Groks. Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land. Grok. Internalize fully an idea.
Yes.
Go on.
How do you spell that? What is it? How do you
Grok? Grock. Completely made up word by Robert Heinlein. I'm a geek.
Grok.
Grok. So he's as a Martian. He's taking on human society. It's a really, really good book. Grokking it means both internalizing it, but fully understanding the adage. Understanding.
Yep. My grok was to use my microphone to teach truth and speak freedom. And it also was not just this microphone here on the podcast, but my voice, right? My mediums of writing this book and podcasting and one-on-one relationships and friendships and speaking my experience, because it's not just my story. My story isn't for me. It's for everyone else too. And that's not an ego thing. That's not like, I can't wait to get on this podcast I'm doing to go ahead and talk about myself. It's one of the best places to connect with people and share ideas, but also the ideas that have been given to me that aren't just for me that I could pass along. And so I could tell you from my work with plant medicines, I know specifically the people who have responded to me and said, you sharing this information or this idea with me has had this effect in my life. And now I operate differently because of it. And so this narrative that's becoming so pronounced in my business and my relationships, it's completely soul altering, right? So how did
Enhancing.
How did you get into it? Like how did you hear about it?
In terms of plant medicine specifically? Yeah. It's funny that you think of it as one trajectory. I will give the straight cisgendered male audience and some of your female cisgendered audience a bit of an interesting story. When you're an LGBTQ plus person in a metropolitan city, even as small as San Francisco, the myriad of inebriation, passages, availabilities, or options are nearly endless.
Yep.
That being said, it was friends from Israel that introduced us specifically to ayahuasca through shamans first, but then through our own experience. They were very, very magnanimous, and they shared with me and my partner a bottle. And yes, we took it as let's deep dive into it. The funny thing is, at first we thought about it as those are interesting lessons, your first one or two times, and those are fun lessons. But then you get the undertone of there is internal growth. There's this big round table that we discussed earlier in this conversation, and then oh crap, I'm actually seeing the participants and my own dark alley and recesses of my mind have a visualization. Again, I'm being very cautious in defining them as items on purpose, because I think it's really depends on the purpose. I think we all, in our very limited capacity to perceive the unperceivable or grasp the finite in the infinite and vice versa, I think we're just limited in our tool set. That being said, it's a tool set. So I am very, very careful with, yes, I've seen one of my demons, and even describing it in details was one of the most horrifying experience post ayahuasca ceremony I've ever had, because I had the vivid details, but I've never left an ayahuasca journey without a task list. Never have I left an ayahuasca journey without, this is the person that I need to say that specific I'm sorry to. This is the person that I need to reach out to and hug. This is the person that I need to go back on anything or everything that I've done or haven't done that requires a course correction in my pursuit of better self. Speaking of better self, allow me another tangent. I as much as you feel, and by the way, I hear it, your microphone is the story to be shared as a vehicle for the rest of the world to lean in and glean into a different way of healing themselves.
Yep.
And I think in a world that's saturated with sanctioned medicine versus non-sanctioned medicine, I'm a Venezuela. Give everybody access to everything and put all the money in care and health and love and support, and the world would look different. But then again, I'm the same person that thinks that the top 5,000 are interesting black holes in terms of gravity and sociopathy. not by their own intention, but the machination of power. And then the other 7 billions are candle holders. But that reality of 7 billion versus that just talks about that struggle of light versus dark. You know, really, really, and I'm very pragmatic. I don't think people are ill-intending. I really don't. I think the more you remove yourself, or people, the more they remove themselves from day-to-day life, they fall into the trappings of not understanding and not being empathetic towards what day-to-day life is for most people. So I really divorced myself from intent. You know, the whole legal mens rea actus reus, this idea of you need intent and action, and that action needs to be premeditated by intent. I don't think people are that sociopathic at the top. I really think the have and have-nots have the dialogue, this specific dialogue, since the dawn of time for a reason. Yep. It's a very complex one to solve.
It is. And I don't think it can necessarily be solved. I think it just, because if you know, there's a couple ideas there, but basically one of the points I wanted to talk to was the light versus the dark. And you illustrate it so beautifully with the whole black hole and the absence of light. And we are in a very, very specific time in our universe's history when it comes to light and dark, specifically now. And, you know, this being the February 2021, you know, we just had the beginning of a pandemic that on so many levels, I have so many opinions on and feelings on. And the pandemic was also amidst a huge political deal here in the States, which affected the world. And then also we're dealing with, you know, this upcoming Great Reset, which is just an absolute clusterfuck of power versus the haves and have-nots.
and can allow me just a quick tangent before you finish your thoughts?
Please.
It annoys me to no end that the narrator of, so to speak, the Great Reset, which is why I don't look down, but I walk around it. I learned in my not so tender age, when you see a dumpster fire, you can walk around it. When you see a bonfire, where you can walk around it. There are certain campfires that are talking about the people around the fire. There are certain fires that talk about the fire. I rather talk about the people around it.
Yep.
It's way more fun. It's literally royalty. The narrator for the Great Reset is royalty. So if you don't find any cognitive dissonance in the problem there, we have other conversations to have. That being said, if you're familiar with Naomi Klein and the shock doctrine back in the day, the haves will always benefit from a global disaster or any disaster on any scale, because buying cheap and selling high is the raison d'etre of capitalism. That's just what it is.
It is. And it's more than just the capitalism now. It's more the control of personal sovereignty that I'm really interested in trying to figure out how to combat with my candle, you know?
Find the candles that resonate with yours, which then leads me to the other side of the same thing. Like, you are in this platform to share the shape, form, color, and Kelvin units of your candle. That is it. And knowing the same thing about myself, which, by the way, kindred spirit in the sense of, I recognize that my microphone is there to be projected outwards, but in my world, because I'm a cisgendered white male, that I am with one Brazilian, one American, doesn't matter, but they're very like white looking. Let's just put it that way. And we have the invisible mental of that specific privilege in our world. The more I work on the broader EID world, which is differently abled, LGBTQ+, Black, Indigenous people of color, women, post-career people, that post-career became really a scary story if you think about it. Most people don't have anything. And United States is really fucked up in terms of its own structures, but I would leave that for a different time. In those 5 groups that I just described about 77% of the population that have no representation. They are underestimated, not underrepresented, mind you, underestimated, because they reflect and represent, in my humble opinion, a 2x to a 3x GDP. If the world was benign and the bonfire was warmth, and our campfire and our conversation would have been beneficial and mutually constructive, and a positive feedback loop would have led to more positive results, we would have had a tremendously different world. I feel my microphone is to take all of these people that I just described, cheerlead them on with my pom-poms. As I said earlier in the conversation, I'm a pom-pom person with a test vest. I have an ounce of charm, but the rest is pom-poms. Get the people of that different walk of life onto my stage and get the fuck out of there.
Yep. Yep. I agree. And so we're, with the dark versus light, it's we're given this period, and some people it's going to, there's different thoughts, schools of thought out there. There's, saying this whole from inception of pandemic until we kind of see a turn in cultural and world's events is going to be about 7 years. Like there's these different numbers to be thrown out there from different people, different thought leaders and experts. And regardless of what they say, we are in a period of dark versus light. And, we've kind of always been there, but I think this is more of a pronounced situation, especially when you realize that when you're called, and for those that are listening or watching or that are plugged into our camps and circles and know us or know of us, if you're called to share your light, and if you feel, whether that's a podcast, a business, a relationship, like you said, saying sorry to someone that you've wronged, even that one little seed that's sown of love and light, that's what's going to help bring us back to a place of abundance and unity. And with my company named 46 and 2, it's all about consciousness evolution, becoming one beautiful embodiment of consciousness. That's where we can be. It's just, another illustration really quick with one of my good friends, Lane. Lane is on this path with me as well. He's, he's an executive, he's a ex-Green Beret, but he doesn't embody any of that. He embodies love and light. And you'd never look at him and be like, wow, that guy used to be probably a killer. I don't know if he's killed him. He could.
But at least he had the machinations of one.
Right, yeah. Right. But now he's not there. He told me a story. He's like, if you think about Jesus was such an embodiment of light that Jesus was able to hang around, Mary Magdalene, the prostitute, and some of these dregs of society, but he never let their darkness change his light.
It's because there were never dregs of society. And
right,
the funny thing is all prophets say that. All prophets are that.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying is like people would conceive these like people that are judgmental or people that are like Pharisee type where they throw dirt on people and they say they're holier than thou kind of thing. They would look at these people as dregs of society, but Jesus never looked at, everybody was the same.
Right.
And he was able to go into dark places and it would never affect his light. He could come back out brighter. And so I think that we're in that place now where people have a light within them. They have a story to share. They have things that they can add value to the world and to themselves in a great way. The darkness that we kind of see right now, we can really kind of get rid of that.
We can at least put it into the light, and we can put the litmus test on. Is there a positive feedback loop here? Are things benefiting? I honestly, and that's a joke I share, and I do not mind sharing here. Every single zero you add to your bank account, you walk away from the day-to-day life of the day-to-day person on earth. Every single zero. And I'm not saying it's sociopathy by design, but I am saying it's sociopathy by pursuit. So every layer you walk away, that's a layer that's worth a litmus test. I'm not saying end with billionaires. One of my favorite things is, so I see Bernie, by the way, sitting there with the mittens. But my political aspiration is not left by virtue of I'm an admirer of one political thinking versus another. I'm just a believer that every human deserves a floor. But fuck the ceiling, go as high as you want. On the contrary, I think best innovation on earth comes for this incessant desire to outdo our previous generation. What is really different in today's time with any different time prior is the interconnectivity and interdependency that we have on broader global systems. So what was the Spanish flu, let's say 100 years ago, it's not the same when your supply chains require certain work in China and certain work in Austin and then certain work here to get to your plate or your house or your home or your apartment. And then on top of that, there are systemic problems that I honestly believe were there from the beginning of time, but by virtue of being insular, a village is removed from a teeth, and a teeth is removed from a kingdom, and a kingdom is removed from a country, and a country is so forth and so on and so forth and so on. And we are today with, by the way, unfortunately, the megaphones that are out there for people like you and I benefit from dissent more than empathetic feedback loops. They literally, the dollar sign is attached to how much dissent we can create in our own dialogue, be it an argument, assertion, or otherwise, rather than the echoing of do good, dude. Like that's, if you're familiar with Thomas Paine, and I think we touched it in our first conversation, I will share it here in this public forum. Thomas Paine's, and I always botch the quote, but I don't mind. Mankind is my brethren. Mankind is my brethren. The world is my country, and to do good is my religion. Thomas Paine. That's it. And if you just literally hunker down on those three things, divorced from moral or ethical boundaries, limitations, or definitions that are thrown at you, and you just focus on those three things, you can do pretty amazing shit that helps others.
I mean, well said, brother. And leave it there, right? In terms of just be love and light, and don't worry about the, because you have this weird thinking about even politics. 80% of us out of the 100%, there's 10% on either side. 80% of us kind of want the same things. We want good education. We want healthcare. We want good food to eat. We want opportunities to live the dream. It's the 10% on either side, whether it's left or right, that's the loudest and the ones that get the most attention. It's the people that are,
but loud is money too, please.
Right.
Like it's the same. It's the same. Not unfortunately, the legislation of money is voiced, but rather the actual power that comes with money that shifts us.
For sure. And money will cast a light on what your soul is really all about. So if you become more philanthropic, if you become more, help other people, whatever that is, because you have more money, that's who you are. But then if you become someone who's more of a dictator and likes to step on people, kick them when they're down, like money will show that side of it too. So it's interesting tool. So speaking about more kind of that business kind of feel, talk about your trajectory with what you're doing with your company.
Okay, so would love to. And this is, by the way, the very first public forum that I ever even discussed it. At first, the reality is we thought about machine learning as, I know it's a huge stretch. We took literally a sidestep, which I love. We took machine learning and thought, why are the returns on Sand Hill Road /VCs, Sand Hill Road being the venture capitalist institutionalized financing here in the Bay Area? I'm in San Francisco personally, but those 13% success rates are derivatives of a very specific profile, which by the way make me feel like I'm a social good person. No, I'm very pragmatic, and I think very, very, very deeply about threading the needle between how we invest in things, which are often cisgender, white, hetero males. No offense. I was under the same virtue and mental of life until I was met with, oh, you're gay, or oh, you have a husband. And trust me when I say the following, the wind chill was devastating. The wind chill factor was hurting. And of course, I come from a place that's rife with strife when it comes to my identity. Israel, ages ago, as a kid, as a teenager, there was nothing good at being gay, none. I think I'm very, very happy that I'm seeing today's generation in the LGBTQ community not going through the same 2 decades that I needed to frame those 2 decades of my early life as, I get to be paid dividends for the amount of abuse I've experienced. That was that construction of, I've reframed it to feel better about it as an adult. But then I'm looking at kids today and I'm like, thank heavens that they don't have to go through the same level of strife in order to need to be in my position, which is I will draw the silver lining out of a black hole. I don't mind. I will find the reason and the place, and that will be powerful. Connected it to the company, I really believe, and data starting to show both within the company and outside, and we're about to open our doors in terms of a launch and beta very soon to other people, which is we already have a cohort and an active cohort, but we are seeing the differences once you go through a certain hurdle, allowing a different voice by virtue of being different. And I mean different, not corporate, not whale, not white, not male whale. That's a nice little tangent there. Not whale, don't be a whale. But really, it creates, it's a certain gravitas that comes from the way to talk or the way to behave. And once you go through that hurdle, and then there's a second prerequisite, which is once you finance them the second time around, a EID-based company, and I'm not talking about mission. Again, mind you, I'm a capitalist. I'm a democratic capitalist. I'm a social democratic capitalist, but I like and I love the pursuit of innovation, which requires this unfettered ceiling. So in our company, we found certain success metrics and we follow them. And it can be boiled down to things as simple as unit economics, problem solution fit, and then team execution, which are like the standard things. I think every single person in entrepreneurship feels very, very deeply about why early stage can do better or worse in deep conversations. We've distilled that down. And then we asked another additional question: do you live to your full potential by being diverse? And we kept the diverse umbrella as open and as wide as possible, because you do not change systems. That's not my quote. I think I shared it with you earlier. You do not change system by running into windows. And whatever paradigm exists right now, the best thing you can do is walk around it and build a better one, more efficient one, more connected one.
Yep.
Which is literally what Deal Engine does in terms of a company. Now, once companies are in that place of understanding that, like, there are two hurdles, which is one is create a cohesive, communicative team. And then the other is get to the second round of investment, have that validity, that proof of concept in the market, have that second traction and repeatable purchase. Get there. And here's how great things can happen. And in my own personal life, in the same breath, much like you, because I'm like, okay, enough with this separate idea of whom a person is. Enough. A person is everything. A person is all of themselves. A person is all of those demons in that table breaking bread. I started a channel that just literally talks to the ether. I called it Little Gay Guide, and it happened a day after I could. In the beginning of the Jewish year, unintentionally, mind you, within the pandemic, because I'm like, enough, I need to speak. I was brought here to speak. I'm here to speak. But now I learned, by the way, now since September, that's the channel, that the better the diverse the people I brought in, which I didn't bring many yet, the better my message will be heard, because it's not my message to tell.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to your story not being just for you, it's for other people. And so when you're working in your business and in that space of creation and then coming towards a, key demographic, an avatar, a deliverable, who is it that you're serving and how are you serving them?
My raison d'etre, and specifically my self-actualization, Maslow speaking, Maslow hierarchy of, I am shamelessly me at this point. And what I mean by that is, I want to serve the general good of general people, regardless of the walk of life. And I think our tent is the world. Our tent is not EID founders or EID ventures. That would be limiting this idea of what the world can benefit from. Just healthier, more loving, more positive companies. And I know it sounds, again, when we talked about the hokiness of it all, but to resonate with something you said, that hokiness is where we need to start. And let me hark back to something really interesting that happened during COVID, which is one of my pet peeves. And I use that very, very, very distinct term on purpose. Black Lives Matter happened, and we had this huge rise in consciousness. And I would be one of the biggest proponents for lip service on any level, because lip service is where difficult conversations start.
Yep.
Own it. You're here for the lips, not you, but the people that went up and said, we are now committing X amount to diversity and inclusion, or Y amount to equity, inclusion, and diversity. Great, good for you. And then you look at actual investment, and the needle moved 0.1%.
Yep.
In the course of, and I'm like, come on, people, the proof is literally in the pudding. We can do better.
The money's not where the mouth is right now.
But it will.
Yeah. That's why you're here.
Conversation started.
It's important to have those conversations and to get a little weird and have difficult conversations. And, because from uncomfortability is born progress and growth. And you can look at somebody with a different perspective, belief system, but if you can go into that conversation with open minds, and anytime someone presents me with better data, better facts than I had before, I'm completely open to changing my mind. I'm not going to die on my sword or be romantic about an idea. So I think it sounds like you're kind of in the same vein. And how are you deploying this? What I do in my business is more of like a consciousness awakening around wealth management and all how to have a happy, fulfilled life. How are you deploying that in a deliverable? Like, how are you? Because it sounds like that's what you're doing as well.
It doesn't. The one does not betray the other in any mutual exclusive way. On the contrary, I think one of the reasons that I held onto the channel, even though it became like one of those things that I can do even I'm envious in the sense that I am so happy that we're having this conversation. It reminds me how much fun it is to do it even from the other side.
Yeah.
But the reality is just we don't have time because startups are startups. And they require this incessive hands-on hustle, do this thing, get to the people, say the thing, be in front of people. In the same breath, how do I connect the production from Little Gay Guide as a YouTube channel to the idea? I actually put most of my focus on Deal Engine because I think we were delivered a very connected world. With the advent of typing all the way to this conversation, communication only got better, more connected and broader. It would be downright stupid on my part to not be aware and awaken to the fact that now your audience can be everyone and everything. And much like you, I espouse to tell others, if you have the drive to create, please, for fuck's sakes, create. No matter what it is, your passion is your fuel. Go for it. Go for it. There will be other people resonating with your message. As I told you, the Kelvin, the warmth, the tone of the color of that candle, they will swarm and you'll become this wonderful harmonized chorus that lends just a tiny, tiny tip on that weighted scale towards better.
Love it. Yeah. It's incrementally progressive. It's doing a service to the world. And you're not one thing, you're all things when it comes to business and personal and consciousness and just showing up for people. And so what are some things that you're doing for yourself personally these days to continue that? Are you in any kind of like health and wellness routine? Are you into any kind of spiritual learning, growing? Like, what are you doing to show up well for yourself?
Talk to me in 6 months and we'll have that discussion.
All right. I will. You heard it here first. I'll hold you to it.
I am a man of my word. Talk to me in 6 months.
August
the reality
23rd.
that I'm trying, you got it. Yours. My boyfriend's birthday is the 20th. So if it's on the weekend, you get somewhere around that week. But you get it. You heard it here. The second thing I would say is the sloth element of my scene. And I'm not Christian in any way, shape, or form, nor am I Jewish, nor am I anything else. I think the virtue of religion is very, very dual edged. And most people take the sharpness of it. And unfortunately, that's unfortunate, because if the roll of the dice of the religion is where I was born, therefore I believe in that, you need to throw that away right away.
Like what it really is too is 3 out of 4 people that have a religion that believe in it, it's because their parents practice that same religion. So it's
and by virtue of geography and people, you get to lose that broader perspective you and I share. The reason I evoked the name of the sin sloth is I am 10, 12, 13 hours, 14 hours in front of this screen working for the company because I have to. That's just one of those formative stages. There is a price to success, I think. I think there is a ways to work maybe smarter, but the reality is, as my husband likes to joke, there's not a better time to not have a life. Yeah. this is the perfect time to be an early stage startup that requires 17-hour days.
How's the lockdown situation out there? Is it pretty intense, or are you wide open over there?
We are completely closed.
Completely closed.
I hope the gyms are opening in 2 weeks. I really do.
Wow.
We have outdoor dining ish. I've done that twice in the last couple of weeks.
Newsom and Garcetti are running California into the ground. Well, one for LA, but it's incredible the trash fire. No offense, that California is becoming.
It's good and bad because we can talk about literally the 10% on either side. It's crazy. For all states.
I think the mass exodus of people that are specifically like
come on, it gave me a better apartment for a cheaper price. Look at the bright side.
They have people. I heard this. I was in a speakeasy mastermind back in Scottsdale a couple of weeks ago, led by Steve Sims, who's an incredible human being, fun guy, very cool, interesting dude. Someone at that speakeasy was talking about how they're paying people $150K per year to go around picking up feces off the ground because of all like the homelessness in tent cities. That's insane.
That's a really, really fun talking point, and I can talk about the grave dangers of San Francisco. I have seen my city. By the way, I'm provided and afforded the perspective of an expat, and I chose my city. I'm in a position of privilege of knowing deeply at least 7 other cities because of my travels. I've seen San Francisco reinvent itself now 4 times. Be it post.com, 2008, now, and a little weird period in between the 2008 to now. And quite frankly, I cannot wait to see what comes next for this city. And whether you want to see it or not, or be it or not. And I think there's a wonderful conversation to have in terms of what are the next nexuses
Yes.
of being in consciousness, because I think COVID told us and taught us that we can do this like this.
Yes.
It doesn't require the freaking city.
Nope.
But San Francisco is a nexus of innovation. And for me specifically, if you want my story, one tribe is LGBTQ gay, and there's the benefit of me walking to the grocery store or to the gym or anywhere, and I will meet 5 to 10 to 15 acquaintances.
Yep.
There is a tribal, powerful element in being able to do that. That's one. 2, it's the entrepreneurial world at large, not just the gay entrepreneurial world, but the broader one, which is innovation come here to be birthed. And between the 2 of them, post a very painful divorce. That's a conversation for another time. I know we're coming near to the top of the hour, and I at least have a call right at that time. But when I was going through one of the most difficult parts of my life, which was a good decade ago, a failed startup, a horrible divorce, you can literally count everything crashing. And I'm talking literally everything. Every single ball juggled is fall to the floor and became its own time bomb, if not its own bomb.
Wow.
And I looked around me, I'm like, okay, there's a choice here. And the gravitas of those 2 tribes in their tandem. Back then, they were not connected in any way, shape, or form. We didn't have things like Start Out, which is LGBTQ entrepreneurs, nonprofit, amazing. Or we didn't have social hour with my tribe in our field, but we have those separate tribes, and I had those separate tribes. And by virtue of them existing, literally rebuilding life from scratch did not faze me. I stayed.
Yep.
That's the beauty of San Francisco.
and resilience of human beings, right? If nothing else, we're resilient. We try to come back more conscious, better, stronger, faster, learn from our mistakes. And again, this was mistakes we've repeated through history, but I feel like some of this is being changed. So, but yeah. I love your perspective, and you are a true, is it San Francisco night? Like what's the word?
How about human? How about we'll settle on human? A human that chose to settle down in San Francisco.
I love it, man. Well, you know what? Let me be the first of the viewers and listeners to say thank you for who you are. Thank you for your story, your journey, your mission. I'm excited to continue our conversations and our path where that might lead us on our journey. But he's the amazing, the mighty, the powerful Ron Zakay. I'm Jesse T. Be sure to catch us on next week's episode of The Jesse T Show.